Thank you for joining me for Part 3 of the series, Sage PFW 2010, First Peek at the New Release. My name is Siobhan Finders, and I am the Product Manager for Sage PFW. This video series will focus on the new features and functionality available in Sage PFW 2010, and this video is Part 3, Saving Time. Sage PFW 2010 has a number of time-saving features, starting with the option to post a gain-loss transaction to the current period. For those using the multi-currency module, you now have the option in both accounts receivable and accounts payable to post the gain-loss transaction to the prior period as it has posted in the past, or post the gain-loss transaction to the current period and not affect your prior closed periods. In accounts payable, under Period End Processing, Print and Post Distribution to GL, the option to post the gain-loss transactions in the current period is available on the first tab. In Accounts Receivable, Period End Processing, Print and Post Distribution to GL, the Post Gain-Loss Transactions in Current Period is available on the first tab as well. This can save you time by eliminating the journal entries that were required to force the posting into the current month. Two enhancements have been added to the 1099 processing procedure to save you time and effort at year-end. The first change is the addition of the ability to bypass the business logic built into the 1099 processing feature and print 1099s for all vendors regardless of the amount of payments received. In accounts payable, Period End Processing, 1099 Processing, if we select to prepare the 1099 miscellaneous form, you'll note that two new fields have been added to the form, allowing you to select to set a minimum dollar amount and then to enter the appropriate amount. When this option is selected, 1099s will be processed for all vendors who meet the minimum dollar amount specified. If this option is not selected, it will process the 1099s based on the business logic built into the 1099 processing feature. The second 1099 enhancement is the ability to consolidate 1099s for multiple vendors. If you have vendors with several different locations and you're required to submit a single 1099 for all of those vendors, this will be a perfect solution for you. When consolidating vendors, there are several steps that you will need to take. Under Accounts Payable, File Maintenance, Vendor, the first thing you'll do is in the list of vendors, you're going to determine who your primary vendor is going to be. Note that I have cleverly named this primary so I know exactly which vendor is my primary vendor. The next step, in the vendor maintenance file for each of your secondary vendors, you will need to select the Process Information tab, and again I've named this secondary so it's easy for me to tell which one it is. So I'll select the Process Information tab. On this tab I'm going to select to combine with my primary 1099 vendor, at which time it opens up this field which allows me to select my primary vendor from the list of vendors. Note that your primary and secondary vendors both must have Generate 1099 selected, and they also must have a default box number assigned. They do not have to have the same default 1099 box number. So I will go ahead and generate the 1099s by going to Period End Processing, 1099 Processing, and Prepare 1099 Miscellaneous Form. Because all of the setup is done in the vendor maintenance screen, all I need to remember on this particular screen is under the Format tab that I can select Summary or Detail for my report type. Because I want to show you the new fields on that report, I'm going to select Detail and select Process. When the report appears, you'll note that a single 1099 prints for my primary vendor. Underneath is a note that details my primary vendor and the dollars paid to that primary vendor, and then any secondary vendors that I might have assigned to this primary vendor and the dollars paid to that vendor as well. You no longer have to manually consolidate and type these 1099s for your vendors with multiple locations. Next in the saving time category is the ability to make the freight taxable on the front screen in Order Entry Pro and in Sales Order. The screens are virtually identical in the two modules, so we'll look at the Order Entry Pro screens. If we go to Order Entry Pro, Sales Order Processing, Sales Order Entry, where the freight was entered in the past, you will note that there are two new fields. One to designate the freight as taxable, and when that's selected, it opens up the taxable tax key where you can assign a tax key to the taxable freight. You might wonder what the big deal is, since in Sales Order Entry you can simply select the Line Items tab and enter the freight as a line item, but you don't always know the freight amount when you're taking orders. That information may only be available once the items have been picked for shipment. So, let's take a quick look at shipment processing screens. If we open up the shipment processing and we choose Sales Order Shipment Entry for invoices, the same can be taken care of here under Sales Order Shipment Entry for documents. Now here it will make a difference. We'll select a sales order, and once the sales order comes up, you select it for invoicing, which then opens up the fields below. When we select the taxable freight box, it will automatically populate with the tax key defaulted from the Ship To menu. You can go ahead and leave this the way it is, or you can click on the lookup and select any of the tax keys that you have. At that point, you enter the freight, and the tax will be generated on that freight. No longer do you have to navigate back to the original sales order to add the taxable freight to the line item screen. You can add it right here on the shipment entry screen. The final item in the saving time category is my favorite, the addition of the Find Historical button on the return entry screen. Anyone who's had to process a return for hundreds of line items will absolutely love this feature. On Order Entry Pro, under Return Processing, on the Return Entry screen, you will now see the Find Historical button. By clicking on this and selecting an invoice from the list, you'll see that the Return Entry screen will now populate with all of the information from the original invoice. Check out the Line Items tab. All of the line items are listed as well. Return the lines that you must and delete the rest of the lines. This can save you a lot of time having to re-enter each of the line items. Not only that, it reduces the potential for error. This feature is very similar to the Find Historical feature in Sales Order. Thank you for viewing Part 3 of the series, Sage PFW 2010, First Peek at the New Release. For more information on Sage PFW 2010, please register for one of our live or recorded webcasts at www.sagewebcast.com. I have included the client care contact information and the support contact information, as well as how to access the knowledge base.